Hi, I'm Amy Porter, and this is my podcast.
Hi, guys.
My mission is to show people how to empower themselves through music, business, and media. I try to see as clearly as possible how I can help. I showcase the music that I've played and the people I've met along the way. I'm a wife and a stepmom. You might know me as a professor, a performer, a producer, a publisher, a recording artist. I'm the founder of a couple of nonprofits. Welcome in to my PorterFlute Pod.
I wrote a trio. Do you want to try it?
Yes, I do.
And this really just started out as an improvisation, and I decided to put it down on paper. So that's what this is.
How come my part says bass flute 1?
Maybe I didn't write it for you.
I think it's because you're principal bass. I'm bass 2.
Okay.
Welcome to PorterFlute Pod. It's Season 8, Episode 8, and it is my pleasure to welcome Ali Ryerson to the podcast. With a career spanning 5 decades, jazz flutist Ali Ryerson has consistently ranked among the top flutists in the downbeat jazz poll for well over a decade. She was born in New York City and she grew up in a musical family. Her father, Art Ryerson, was a renowned jazz guitarist, and he played in the Paul Whiteman Orchestra and later became a studio player in New York City, recording with everyone from Charlie Parker, Sarah Vaughan, Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong. She's here to talk all about that. She carried on the family tradition, becoming an international touring and recording artist with performances ranging from Carnegie Hall and the Kennedy Center to the Blue Note in New York and Japan. She's had festival appearances worldwide. She's released over 24 albums on major jazz labels. And when her groundbreaking jazz flute big band released their debut CD, Game Changer, on Capri Records, the album hit the top 10 on the U.S. jazz charts for 6 straight weeks. She's also performed with classical artists like Julius Baker and Pavarotti. She's also played and recorded with jazz greats like Hubert Laws and Art Farmer, Mike Manieri, Roy Haynes. So many people. Ali has been jazz chair for the NFA convention. She's been the founder of the Jazz Flute Big Band at the NFA convention, and she was the program chair for the 2023 NFA convention in Phoenix. Congratulations, Ali. Ali has a wonderful book called The Jazz Flute Practice Method. She also has her Jazz Flute Solos book that you can get. I can't wait for you to meet Ali Ryerson. My friend, Ali Ryerson, welcome to PorterFlute Pod.
Oh my God, Amy, I am so happy and honored to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I haven't seen you since the Atlanta convention on the escalator.
That's true, exactly. You were doing your Grand Dame podcast.
Yes.
For it. Yeah.
In Search of Grand Dames, as imposed upon me by producer Alan J. Tomasetti, who has rolled out the red carpet for you with a lot of questions. I think our listeners would love to know information about you and just what you're up to and why we need to pay attention to you in our life. I remember being a guest with you at a festival. I remember having you at my own festival.
Yes.
I feel like you are ageless, and yet you're, as a woman, slightly older. So if I can confess right now, I have always looked up to you as a professional woman, as an artist who is ageless. It's true. So thank you for serving as an example to those of us who we age. You don't, but we all age. Hey, hey to the listeners, just don't age, okay? Don't grow old. Let's go back to the beginning. So I'm going to ask you what first drew you to the flute and what led you specifically into jazz?
So, and before I even get into me, I also want to just remind us and share with the listeners, when I first met you, and it was at the Florida Flute Convention, and we were sharing the headliner, position in a sense, and I fell in love with you, and I have been your biggest fan ever since meeting you and hearing you, and it was like an instant friendship. And then I remember a few years later, we had a lovely reunion at Hidden Valley out in California, and that was at the Northern California Flute Camp. And so it's been, and then of course when you invited me to your Anatomy of Sound to University of Michigan, that was amazing, and I had the best time there with your students and also getting to play with you, and it was amazing. So I am in awe of you. So.
Oh, well, thank you. I believe at Hidden Valley I lured you into a run early in the morning.
You did. I remember, and on the old airstrip. As far as what got me into music and everything, I grew up in a musical family, so I always kind of refer to my situation, my environment, as the perfect storm to becoming what I have become, a jazz flutist. And my dad, Art Ryerson, was a great jazz guitarist. He got his start during the big band era back in the 30s and 40s. He was with Paul Whiteman, the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, which was one of the great big bands of that era. George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. This was slightly before my dad's time, but that was the jazz band that performed that. I have 3 older brothers, and we're all musicians. My maternal grandmother, and I'm named after my maternal grandmother, her name was Alice. She was also known as Ali, so I kind of love that nickname, and so I adopted that as well. But she and her siblings were all professional musicians, and they used to play, and my grandmother was in vaudeville. She had a sister act. She and her siblings played for the silent films in the music theaters, and so the lineage is long in terms of my family. So growing up, my 3 brothers and I, we all started on the piano. I started when I was 5. We had a piano teacher, Bill Hargrove, who used to come to the house every week, give us lessons, and my mother would feed him. So that was added incentive for Bill. And then when I think I was 8 years old, we all chose a second instrument, and my brothers chose brass instruments, so trombone and trumpet. I actually initially wanted to play the trumpet because 2 of my brothers did, and so of course I wanted to be like my brothers. And my mother was not in favor of it. She said, I'm 8 years old, keep this in mind. She said, no, you have to save your lips for something else. I had no idea what she meant. I do not remember why I chose the flute, but I do remember that it was an instant love affair. And I loved to practice even the very, very beginning. What happened in my family, because my dad was a professional musician, and at that time, I grew up in Armonk, New York, which is a suburb 35 miles south of Manhattan, but in the country, really. And at by that time, my dad was a very successful studio musician in New York. He was working all the time. He was working, doing maybe 3 jingles a day, and then, a record date at night. And he was recording with everyone from Louis Armstrong to Frank Sinatra to Bill Haley and the Comets. And so he didn't really talk about it, but I kind of found out about all of this at a later date, and not necessarily from him. It was his job.
Wow.
I know, right?
Wow. Wow, Dad.
And so I have to tell you, I know. So a funny story, he started on the banjo, and he was an excellent banjoist. And so the first commercials, Kentucky Fried Chicken, he was a first call guitarist in New York. So he did the very first jingle for Kentucky Fried. And the Colonel was there at the session. Mm. And the Colonel brought, some buckets of chicken for the musicians. And so this he told me about. I forget how old I was, maybe 9, 10, something like that. And so here he is recording with Charlie Parker, with Elvis Presley, all these ridiculously famous people. And the only recording date that I told my friends when I went to school was, oh my God, he met the Colonel. He recorded for Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's the mentality of kids. So
that was what you held important.
Exactly. In my household, we all studied, we had a traditional classical training. And we studied our instruments. When I was in high school, I was studying with Harold Bennett. But my father was also an arranger, and we had a family band, and he wrote the arrangements. I guess it was 11 or something like that. We played at the 1964 World's Fair in New York City. Well, in New York. And at that time, I was actually I think I was the piano player. I was relieved of that duty, thankfully, and became the flute player. But in my household, my brother Art, my oldest brother, had the record player. His bedroom was next to mine. The entire collection was jazz. So I grew up listening to Bill Evans. I grew up listening to the records that my brothers bought, like Miles Davis, Freddie Hubbard, Gil Evans. So it was more geared towards their musical tastes. And as far as improvisation, I lived in a family of jazz musicians who were all trained classically. And but improvisation was it wasn't a part of my training, but it was a part of my experience. When I was 20, I went on the road full time. I had been going to school, and I got a gig on the road with a show band. And then that band ended up becoming the core band for Sandler and Young, a singing team from back in the 60s and 70s, and always played with a big band. So, and they had a musical director, Leo DeLion. And so I sat in the saxophone section, and I had one solo every single night, and it was Tico Tico. And we played Vegas, we played all the theaters in the round, it was amazing. But it was sort of like then that I realized, I'm like, I don't play saxophone, I just play flute. But I never thought of it as I just play flute. Yeah.
Let's move a little bit forward in time to where you're studying classical tone.
Yes.
And classical, you're with a very serious teacher. So let's move on to the language of the flute and how the jazz flute speaks a little bit differently than the classical flute. Because, when you pick up your flute, do you think differently between a classical tone and a jazz tone? Well, I do. A classical phrase and a jazz phrase? Yes. So can you talk a little bit about the language of the jazz flute and how it would speak differently from classical flute and how you crossed over so easily?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I think that they are distinct. And the one thing I realized early on was wearing two different hats was only beneficial musically. So, I mean, if you look at performers like Wynton Marsalis, for example, he's more than capable in both the classical and the jazz world. And you do put on kind of a different hat. When I think in terms of classical sound and tone production, I am thinking purity in terms of a full tone and a clarity of sound. Articulation is quite different between jazz and classical. So I think probably the best way for me to describe the differences is to address the jazz approach. So as far as tone goes, the number one element of my tone that is completely different from classical is the vibrato. So in classical music, I think of vibrato as the default mode. In jazz, I think of it in a way, not 100% opposite, but I think of it more as a tone color.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's how you speak. That's how jazz flute speaks differently from classical flute. Number one, vibrato.
Number one. One of the things I love to do when I'm teaching, especially when I'm teaching a classical player, which is a favorite activity of mine. I absolutely love sharing my passion for jazz with classical players. The first thing I do is I'll play a jazz tune or just a jazz line with a full-on vibrato that even if it's a 30-second note, you're thinking vibrato. It demonstrates how the phrase doesn't swing because the vibrato, the rhythmic aspect of a vibrato will interfere with the groove. So therefore, the way that I approach vibrato is linked with the groove, which is the number one priority in jazz. Phrasing is the key, whether it's classical, whether it's jazz. But again, in jazz, the time, that groove is at the heart of everything. And so the way that I will shape a phrase will be defined by that groove.
Yes. And the shape and the groove lead to ease, I think, for a classical artist, because knowing me, I will turn everything into Berio or Elliott Carter. And then my bandmates in Trio Vibrato will say, no, Amy, it's like a samba or salsa, or they'll start singing ba 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 ba. And I said, oh my God, I was all ta 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 ta.
Exactly. And when you were just giving that little example, that demonstration of a samba, but with your classical tone, and then when you went to a different interpretation of it and you started dancing. So that's what we do. I mean, whether it's physically dancing or just feeling it in our bones, that's at the heart of the transition from classical to jazz. Now, I adore classical music. It's not a competition between classical and jazz at all.
Right.
It's just it's a different way of approaching music. For example, the self-expression that we're allowed in jazz, and sometimes when we're talking about tone in classical, where it's pure, it's gorgeous, it's got that shimmer with the vibrato, and it's so perfect. And in jazz, perfection is overrated. In a sense, we kind of want to get a little bit more expressive and expansive with the options in terms of tone. And so that breathiness sometimes, I call it adding a texture to your tone.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful way to express an emotion or just the way that you're hearing a phrase. One of the ways that classical and jazz are completely married is that we're telling stories musically. And we're not using words, but we are telling stories with these beautiful melodies. You know, with jazz, of course, we're also improvising. So therefore, we're exploring the harmony that is supporting the melody. That's a whole other discussion.
Oh, my goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to add a third component, articulation. I think a lot of times when I was showing the difference between Elliott Carter and a samba, a lot of that would have to do with the interpretation of the articulation. So we've got no vibrato, we've got have a groove, and then we have get the articulation in the right way. Just speak the right articulation. Exactly. Can you help us with that?
Absolutely. And it's my favorite subject. The first thing that I want to address is not even improvisation. It's let's examine how to turn your playing to kind of make you sound like a jazz flute player. And that's the inspiration then for the classical player to feel, to embody that feel. And articulation is numero uno. I mean, after they've kind of reworked their vibrato, and of course vibrato does exist. I do use it, but I use it sparingly and slower, and it will be related to what I'm expressing. But as far as articulation goes, it's what I use is what I call legato tonguing. And so the reason why I will tongue just about everything except for a very fast phrase, say if it's 16th notes or it's an up tempo, I'll be careful not to tongue everything, because that can actually get in the way of the groove. Or a triplet figure that I will usually slur. But the reason why I articulate is because by tonguing something, you're in control of the placement of the note. And again, time is the number one priority in jazz, because the groove, number one. And by having control over the placement of my notes, that's how I can have control over the time and the groove. Creates also just that kind of cool sound, as opposed to, if I do da instead of da 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 da. It's like I can't even slur through something and feel like I'm grooving. But ba ba da ba da ba do ba. The other thing in articulation are the accents. My belief is that where you place the accents in jazz, in a jazz phrase, has more to do with swinging than even the swing eighth note. It's like if I just sing a little phrase like da ba da ba da ba da ba da ba. So if I just do da 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 instead of da ba da ba do ba, those two accents are what define that phrase, and that's what makes it groove.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So it takes up less space, if you know what I'm talking about. It's just as easier and more flexible. And yet you have to have the swing feel, the groove involved. So how can we feel less intimidated to just let go? Because it's intimidating for a classical musician to use that word improvisation or improvise, because they know that it doesn't come with a seatbelt. And yet I'm here to tell you that jazz playing does come with, if you'd like a seatbelt, here you go. You have to learn how to improvise.
So the first thing to remember is how much fun it is.
Fun. Fun of it all. We forget that.
It's like I have the funnest life of anyone I know.
Me too. That's
I
so
know
great.
You do. That was our very first connection back in Orlando, whenever that was, 20 years ago. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it's all about improvisation, whether it's Baroque music or a piece that was just written for you or jazz, like we're talking about today.
Right, exactly. First place I always start with my students who are aspiring jazz flutists, and without their experiences, they're just starting their jazz journey. I will first start with the blues, and even going back before that, just on like a modal chord, without getting too deep into theory and harmony and everything like that. Just say a D minor chord. And number one, there are so many resources so that we can actually get backing tracks. And in my day, so when I was a kid coming into this whole thing, and I finally did get a record player in my room, and I would buy Herbie Mann records, not because of Herbie's, I mean, he was a wonderful player, but I was attracted to his albums because of his rhythm sections. His genius was finding the best players in the world. To me, he was the first world musician, aside from the most famous jazz musician, jazz flutist rather, coming up at that time in my life. I used to just jam along with his records.
Herbie Mann had a book where you could play the melodies from his arrangements with his band, and I used to do it with my teacher.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I love this.
She'd throw in a jazz thing every once in a while.
Yeah. It was just touching again on growing up, and you had also asked the question about jazz flute. Did you think there were going to be any opportunities for someone who just played jazz flute? And I never gave it much thought because of the fact that that's what I played. And I never modeled myself after any jazz flutist. I was more interested in listening to Bill Evans play the piano and Freddie Hubbard playing trumpet and everybody who was in their bands, just as with Herbie Mann when I was listening to that. And when I listened to Hubert Laws and The Rite of Spring, I was blown away. But it was the everything, the Rite of Spring and the bassoon player, and they're all jazz players in this orchestra. So I never felt limited by the flute, and I never felt limited as a jazz player because I played the flute. I never focused on that as a handicap, ever, 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 ever. Scales get a bad rap because of the fact that so many aspiring jazz students, whether it's, no matter the instrument, they're taught how scales relate to chords, which is 100% true. And a scale has more notes than a chord, right there. But the trap is if you start thinking in terms of you're creating a melody if you're playing a scale. That is not true. Now, granted, Mozart is his music is filled with scales. There are patterns in music. That there's no getting away from that. We don't really want to get away from that. But the trap with scales is not understanding that that's a source of notes. It's a set of notes that you want to take to the next level. What scales offer, in my mind, are a set of notes that will work over a chord progression, over the harmony of a song. And so what I do is I will choose material when I mention the blues, or when I mentioned, taking like a modal tune where you have static harmony and maybe just a D minor chord or something like that. But what I do is I take a tune or a set chord progression, and I limit the set of notes so that you don't have to be thinking about each chord as you're going along. So in the blues, say you have a blues in B flat. So you can use one set of notes and not be thinking about the B flat 7, the E flat 7, the F 7. You can just be thinking about this one set of notes that will, in fact, work over the entire chord progression. I can also fill in the gaps, the holes, explaining how that works. But to begin with, I avoid getting into too much theory, because that's kind of a sticky point if you just want to take that first step. So if I have like a backing track and then I say, here's your set of notes, let's think of some rhythms that we can use over this set of notes, like da ba ba da ba, ba do ba 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 da ba. Now go to another ba ba ya ba ba, ba dum ba 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 do ba, that kind of thing. So now you're incorporating an idiomatic jazz rhythm into, so you're not just going da 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 da, that kind of say a tune like Autumn Leaves, which of course is a French song, but American jazz players adopted it many, many years ago, because it's a great melody and it's a great set of changes, as we call the harmonic progression, the harmony, for improvising. So the first thing I'll do is I'll show, okay, let's not read this lead sheet, which is a lead sheet in jazz is the melody and the chord symbols. I'll demonstrate how to, as my students have now coined a new word for something that I do to a jazz standard, to coolify it. So in other words, we have flexibility in how we play the melody. So instead of ba da 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 da. Okay, so first of all, do ba boo da, ba do ba 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 da boo da. So I'm incorporating the swing feel. I'm incorporating the whole idea of anticipation, a little bit of syncopation every so often. Space, so that the jazz police will not come and arrest you if you do not hold a half note out full value.
Yes.
We don't have to. Let's play as we call them, the heads of tunes, the melodies of these standards. And I'll show you how to sound like a jazz flute player, just playing the melodies. So then you start to get that swing feel going. And then on a tune like Autumn Leaves, I can actually reduce all of the chords are all based on and the corresponding scales or modes. I can reduce it to the modes of one single major scale. So all of a sudden I can reduce it to one set of notes. So you don't have to think about each chord as you're playing. Ba ba ya bum ba ba do ba bo ba ya bum ba ba do bum ba da bum ba da ba. So hopefully I play flute better than I sing.
Well, this is like J.S. Bach. When we look at a skeleton of a phrase, we pick out just the notes we need to go to, because every note in J.S. Bach is not sung and fully dug. I call that digging. When you just spread the sound so much that you have no timbre of any kind of style. You just want rich, warm vanilla. Anyway,
I love that. And skeleton of a phrase.
Yes.
I use that same phrase.
There we go. It's overlapping in our technique.
Overlapping.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, music is music. Music is music. And phrasing, whether it's J.S. Bach, whether it's Charlie Parker, there are so many overlaps. It's wonderful. The
discipline is there as well.
Right.
At Brevard Music Center, where I teach in the summer. Yeah. There's a jazz camp going on at the same time as the flute camp. And you would think there was a party going on every night. No, it's just a jam session every night, ages 14 to 30. This jazz camp is so excited to be together and jam that they wouldn't think of being nervous. They wouldn't think about, the vibe is so different from a flute master class.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
I just have to say that but the discipline is there, and that's what they call discipline, is getting together and jamming. Their scales are different, their modes, their blues scales, they're all different things. Their journey is also personal. Their journey is deeply listening to the greats do it. And so I have to just say that the overlap is there for the jazz and the classical artists.
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to thank Claude Bowling for bringing us the first kind of crossover piece that we played on the main stage. So in the 1970s, for those of you that don't know, Jean-Pierre Rampal showed up in the United States. He was on the Muppets. He was in Carnegie Hall. He did all these concerts, and we all flocked to see him. And then we promptly went out and bought a flute. So then he plays this jazz suite, and on the cover was a flute in bed, and there's smoke rings. And I think my mother had a bit of a heart attack when she saw it was that cover of the Bowling Suite and the cover of the Hubert Laws album. Yeah, those two, she had a little panic attack about, but I had no idea. Whatever. I opened the music and I loved it. And on the piano, we all tried to learn the second movement because the opening of the second movement was so beautiful that you had to also learn the accompaniment in case you wanted to accompany yourself.
Exactly.
You're singing and play. Anyway.
Exactly.
So the Bowling Suite. Thank God for Claude Bowling. He wrote that for Jean-Pierre. Yep. And then along, 20 years later comes Mike Mower, et cetera, et cetera. And so they wrote out what we should be doing. Now, I took that to the next level when you were here. And I'll just say a backstory before we talk about these wonderful composers. The backstory is that I like to do little productions, and I do flute musicals, flutesicles or whatever. And so I did one the year you were there. It started with Michael Dougherty. I said, can you come and we'll reenact a real scene to start my flute musical. And in there, I was scared of jazz. I'm curled up in a chair, and Michael's saying, come on, let's just play. And I'm like, no, I need a beer in order to do that. It was just bad. It was really,
so funny.
It was
Michael, I do not play jazz. I don't improvise. My flute doesn't play jazz. No way. Michael, I wouldn't know a blues scale if I was in the room with one.
Just start out a G.
I'm deeply afraid. I might play a wrong right note
Don't worry about it. Loosen up.
Can I have a Corona?
How about a scotch?
G?
G. Yeah. Okay. Maybe.
Look, I have reverence for this art form, and basically I don't want to do the wrong thing. God forbid I play out of tune, and who knows where the downbeat is?
Don't worry about it. Try it. I like it.
I know.
Fun. No,
and then it morphed into me learning, and it was Mike Mower's tune where the whole play shifted, and there's a Santana part in there that I said, let's pause and bring out my buddy Jonathan, and I got the congas, and he somebody said, do you have the part to that? Somebody in my world said, do you have the conga part to that? And I was like, honey.
Right.
There was no music.
There's no conga part to that.
No, he was, reacting, right? We're call and response. So he was reacting, and I just let it go. I let it all out. And of course, there's some picture of me with my hair flying, and it was so fun. And eventually you came on, you were on stage with me. We played Folktale. We played with Laura Dwyer. We played lots of wonderful things. So really was happy to take Mike Mower's piece to the next level. How do you feel about
incredible? Yeah.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun. How do you feel about performing crossover repertoire for people like me?
So for people like you, I think which I think is funny in itself. First of all, there are a few who can perform it as beautifully as you do. I mean, you transform yourself into a jazz flute player, despite the fact that it's written out, and that is really something to me, because I remember that performance so well.
Thank you. I have to say, I have sat in bars at 4 a.m. listening to the blues and jazz, and I have to. Did that affect my playing? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been to the Blue Note a few times.
I've played the Blue Note. Starting with Claude Bowling. So first of all, of course, I got the record. I got the music. I played some of it sometimes. But I got to play with Claude in New York when he was going to be playing Town Hall with Hubert Laws. And it was the California Suite. It was a couple different things. Not. I don't even think it was his original suite. And Hubert couldn't make the rehearsal, so I was asked to play the rehearsal. And Pam Sklar, I don't know if you know her. She's a wonderful flutist from the New York area. Anyway, so we actually played the rehearsal. And the reason it happened was because I had a steady gig on 57th Street in Manhattan, a couple doors down from Carnegie Hall at the Meridian Hotel. And so I was at the, I guess it was weekends or something like that, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm at the piano, I'm doing my duo gig. And as it turns out, Claude Bowling is staying in the penthouse at the Meridian. So he sits down. And so, of course, my piano player and I pull up, I think that second movement, and we played that. So I ended up being invited to rehearse, to kind of sub for Hubert. And it was a ball, And Claude had his French rhythm section, so his bass player and drummer. And they were at the rehearsal. And then when we finished the rehearsal, Claude said, well, let's play a tune together. And so I thought, what more appropriate tune to suggest than Autumn Leaves? So I counted off, and he's, like 1, 2, like that. And he says, oh, no, it's a ballade. And so his bass player and drummer, kind of gave me a wink, like, that's Claude for you. But anyway, we ended up playing it closer to my tempo. But that was a very fun experience. The experience for classical players to play any of Bowling's music, which is written for flute and rhythm section, I think it's a great introduction, like kind of a sneak peek into what it feels like to be a jazz player. Of course, in those pieces, it's mostly the jazz groove is mostly by the rhythm section, and the flute part kind of gets back into the more the classical Bach kind of feel to a Baroque feel.
It does, and the tone, I guess you can kind of pull off a little bit of a classical hybrid tone.
Yeah, exactly.
In this Bowling, but not so with Mike Mower.
No, Mike is a different animal altogether, and his music is super cool. He's a legitimate jazz player and legitimate jazz, composer.
Incredible.
And his kind of on another level, and his music is very challenging.
Yes,
as you know.
Etudes. Yes, I signed the etudes.
It's incredible, and I have played some of it, but of course my love is I want to be the one who's making it up.
Okay, that leads me to a reflection that we have here on PorterFlute Pod. Do you think that classical players can learn something deeper about expression through jazz, through this music that you're playing?
Absolutely.
Not written out for us, just what can we learn that's deeper?
I believe so much in the value of jazz performance and jazz experience, even if it's not performance, even if it's just experience, even if it's going to a concert.
Yes. So about experience, you don't say, was that okay?
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
it opens up another universe to
It just
me.
is. Yeah.
It just is. And I have always been like 150% grateful for my classical background and my classical training, because that has enabled me to be a flute player. You know, in other words,
Yes.
I'm not shucking when I'm playing. That gives me technically so many more options as a player. And with jazz, I think we become so in tune with ourselves, with our artistic side. You know, why are we musicians? Why are we? We love the music, and that love we are expressing when we play, and it's a form of communication. And I feel very strongly that jazz musicians are communicating. They're communicating at a high level with their colleagues on the bandstand. They're communicating with the audience. I mean, of course, Miles Davis might not be the best example when he would turn his back, but Miles Davis's finger was on the pulse of his audience. So that was an affectation, that was a staged thing as far as I'm concerned. You know, he was a creative being, and that all came through. And it was about connecting and communicating. And I think that, I mean, for one thing, I've often talked about intonation and jazz. So, and it doesn't mean that every jazz player plays with great intonation, but I feel that my intonation in general has benefited from the fact that I'm a jazz player, because when I'm improvising, I am hearing what I'm going to play before I play it. I believe any great classical player, I'm looking at one right now, that you hear what you are going to play. You hear that high A, you know, before you play it. And that's what enables you to be able to play in tune. That's what enables you to phrase. You hear it before you play it. And that's the process of improvisation. We hear a line before we play it. It doesn't just happen. And so I think that musical process is another overlap that classical musicians can benefit from, and jazz musicians. If you pay attention to intonation, if you pay attention to you know, how you play things. I often say to my students, and this is a little digression, but in talking about the jazz style, and almost versus improvisation, I say, it's sometimes more important how you play something than what you're playing. How you play it instead of what you're playing. The first step to me has to do with the groove. How do you swing? And never mind about playing all this fancy stuff and making sure you're playing all the chords and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But get that groove, get that, you know, the swing eighth note, the understanding of it, get the articulation, slow down that vibrato or take it out, and understand the phrasing. And then the other thing with jazz musicians that I think obviously with great orchestras, with great chamber ensembles, the element of listening is foremost. With jazz musicians, it's kind of essential. So it's like in classical music, you don't actually have to know the harmony, and you don't maybe have to know what somebody else is playing.
Oh my gosh! But you beg your students.
But you want, exactly.
In jazz, you have to.
You have to, exactly. So therefore, if you can mold, you know, the perfect classical jazz player into one being, yeah. That's the ideal musician. Yeah. That's the ideal musician to me.
That's fun. It's fun to hear you're teaching philosophy. Do you give your philosophy to your members of your jazz flute big band that you founded for the NFA? Is that like a big jazz flute lesson for you? Big master class? Or are these people like, because this is a big project that you have, this flute jazz big band. And I remember you came to me and said, what do you think? Is this nuts? And I was like, no. Do you remember you came to me and asked me? And I said, this is awesome. You just go ahead and do it. Totally. So do you bring this philosophy?
And we're going back over 20 years.
Yeah. Do you bring this philosophy to the jazz big band when you're hosting?
So the genesis of the jazz flute big band started at Hidden Valley. Which was back in, I think it was 2002. I actually had my first class, jazz flute master class. And I was there because of my association with Julius Baker, who we all loved, and he was the first one who actually invited me to play there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
He was such a... Can I just tell you, he was such an influencer. He would tell Gary Shocker, write a second flute part to the Bach Partita, Mr. Composer. So for you, he probably was like, get all those people together. We need this person. He was such an influencer, Julius Baker.
Totally. That is such a great moniker for him.
He made phone calls. Let's just put it that way.
I love it. So in my travels, because I went on the road initially over 50 years ago, and I've spent much of my life on the road playing. And in my travels, I met so many aspiring jazz flutists who would bemoan the fact that they would not be welcomed into their jazz ensembles in their schools or their communities because they played the flute and didn't double. And so I heard it often enough that I decided to create a jazz flute big band that was for flutists only, but all the flutes, starting from piccolo all the way down to contrabass eventually, with piano, bass, and drums, so with a jazz rhythm section. And so I was able to do this, and I founded it at Hidden Valley at my master class. And the first few years, I just commissioned my jazz arranging buddies to write for this kind of brand new animal. And what ended up happening, so at my master classes, I always have experienced jazz flutists and I have complete newbies, classical players who are like, please teach me how to swing. And so what I discovered, because flute players don't get to play in a big band unless it's on one tune or they're doublers or, that kind of thing, or they're lucky like me and I actually tour with an act for a few years where I'm playing with a big band. But the experience of sitting in a section where you're sitting next to someone who gets it, who has experience with the jazz phrasing, with the articulation, the vibrato, all of the above. If they want to just play their written parts and not solo, they're not pushed into it. If they want to take the plunge, everybody can solo. And so it turned into this wonderful supportive environment that has lived to this day. And I brought the idea to NFA when I was jazz chair in 2005. We had the prototype band in 2007 in Albuquerque, and it debuted in 2009 in New York City with Hubert Laws, with Lou Tabakin, with Holly Hoffman, Jamie Bound. It just turned into a whole thing, and the basis of it is to create this very supportive environment. So because of that fear factor, so that everyone is welcomed in, and if try it, you'll like it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so it's and it has just grown. There are now jazz flute big bands which I've played with in Japan. I just got back from Japan.
That's incredible. And for us, for the classical flute nerds, we're like, there's an electric buzz happening around this big band.
I know.
Maybe I should let go a little bit.
I know.
Learn some scales. So how do we learn from Ali Ryerson? We go straight to her jazz flute practice method.
Thank you, Amy.
I mean, there it is.
Oh my God. So that book, which I think I published it, self-published in 2009, and it's kind of become the standard jazz flute practice method, like Flute World and Carolyn Nussbaum, and they even in the jazz world, so jazzbooks.com, which is Jamie Aebersold, they stock it as well. So it's kind of gotten around the world. And that was as a result, basically, of my students who would come to my master class, and they kept clamoring for me to, put all of this that you're teaching us into a book. And so I ended up doing exactly that. And I created exercises which are everything is with the idea of, if you're playing on this chord or this chord progression or on the blues, or if you want to understand, the modes, here are some exercises that will help you to get it under your fingers, in your ears, in your mind, the three things that I keep harping on. And what I did was I transposed everything into all 12 keys, because most jazz books don't do that, because jazz players are used to transposing, classical players are not. And I'm trying to do what I can for my flute family.
We're getting more uncool by the question.
No way. No way. You are the coolest. What was the name of that show that we did? Was that Out of the Cool or Into the Cool?
No, it was responding out of the cool.
Yes.
Maybe that's why people get composers to write down the jazz licks, Like, maybe that's how Richard Blake felt when Dave Heath wrote this piece Out of the Cool, because Dave Heath made Richard Blake sound jazzy, made him feel cool. But I'm scared. Okay, fear. I'm responding. Out of the cool.
I went to some workshop, writing workshop about editorials and how to write correctly if you're going to write your opinion. And you have to respond to something. And so Dave Heath wrote Out of the Cool. And I thought, okay, this is my responding to this piece. So I started with Out of the Cool.
It was great. I loved it.
And we had so much fun. We had so much fun, but I just want to just get back to the fact that we as flute nerds go down a different path, and you as maybe jazz nerds also do.
The act of improvisation is in fact using your ears and coming up with a new melody. I mean, for a flute player, so. Unless we use extended techniques, which I don't, I'm playing one note at a time. So I'm composing a new melody over an existing chord progression. Where I start with all of my students, because in a sense, this is where I started. So just recapping my upbringing, my musical upbringing. I was born into a jazz family, but we were all trained classically. we had music camp and conservatory and everything, private lessons, forever. And then I started gigging with my brothers, and my jazz education was, and I don't even want to say limited to, but for want of another term, it was limited to on stage when I was playing with my brothers or playing in study hall. I was not studying jazz. I was studying classical, and I learned how to improvise by ear for many, many years, even though, I understood at a certain point how to read a chord chart, so to play on changes, but I didn't know anything about, like the altered scale or anything like this. But I was playing by ear, and by the circumstances I found myself in, playing with great players, through osmosis, I was learning a lot. I learned all the tunes on the stand, listening to my brothers. We were not using fake books. I wasn't reading the charts. I learned everything by ear. So I bring that experience to my students, and the fact that my training was initially classical. What I love to do is to relate to the classical training that we were all brought up, with, and to start the jazz education with your ears. Just starting there, and then starting to fill in some of the gaps, explaining why this set of notes works because of this, because of that. And but not overload, not TMI, too much information paralyzes a player.
Correct. And overwhelm.
It's overwhelming. And I have had so many experiences with young players and even college players who are classical flute players. And I will give them a set of notes. I will give them some cool rhythms. We'll start there. And by the end of the hour, these kids are jamming because they're not given too much to have to think about. They can just use their ears. They can just, get into the groove and have fun. And you can layer this education as you go along. But I try to relate to all of my classical flute buddies, just going back to where I came from. I am a nerd right with you. I ended up falling in love with jazz theory too, but that was not until years later when it was all of a sudden the revelations where, oh, that's what I've been playing. Oh, now I understand that. And so it was filling in the holes with something that I already intuitively was kind of doing.
Well, we have rapid fire flute favorite segment from Alan J. Tomasetti.
Okay.
Give a shout out, give us a commercial. What's your favorite flute to play on?
Okay, so Sankyo.
I see. And what kind of what is it?
So I came back. So it's the 401. Many years ago, my first alto flute, which I got in 1985 at a New York flute convention. I think it was 85 or 86. And Al Weatherly at the time was my repairman. And
remember
he was
him?
The Sankyo distributor. And
yes.
And so anyway, I went to the convention, tried all the alto flutes, and fell in love with the Sankyo alto. And then eventually I had been playing Haynes at the time, C flute, and I discovered Sankyo flutes. And my flute journey continued, down the road. And I had an association, of course, with Gemeinhardt, and I ended up with these beautiful autograph series of flutes, the alto and the C. But very recently, as of this past summer, I came back home to Sankyo. So I love it. And so my answer as far as which flute, C or alto, I love them equally. So it's impossible for me to, so I have to make the C and the alto flute into one word. Calto. The Calto flute.
So I know that I can improvise when I know the tune, just like you said. If you know the tune and you choose a few notes, for instance, it's becoming that season. So, for instance, Silent Night. If you started playing a jazzy Silent Night underneath, I could probably play a really jazzy Silent Night for you.
You could coolify it.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, what's your
Yeah.
favorite jazz tune to improvise on?
Oh my gosh. So probably the tune, whenever I'm at a jam session or something like that, I'll say, let's do Stella by Starlight.
Oh, Stella by Starlight. I love
Just love
that.
that tune. I mean, I have so many favorite tunes. And the project that I had done, which started during the pandemic when everything went online, and talking about favorite tunes for my students and my classes. I do classes on Lesson Face for maybe the past 15 years. So I started composing jazz solos on standards, and Stella was one of the very first. All of the solos are on the same chord progression, but of course I claim the solo as my own. But it's also a great way for aspiring jazz flutists to get inside the jazz style to play. And shall I show you the book?
Yes.
Okay, so that's it.
Oh, Ali's Jazz Solos Volume 1 for C instruments.
That's
Look at
on
that.
changes of autumn leaves, so springing blooms. So anyway, and I'm working on Volume 2 right now. So.
That's incredible. So you're basically giving us what Gene Baxter gave the orchestral world by giving the solos to the major tunes.
I think of improvisation as spontaneous composition. And I think of improvisation and composing almost as one and the same. It's like when I'm composing, I want the inspiration that I feel when I'm improvising. When I'm improvising, I want to bring in the form and the development, all the elements that go into composing. By composing a jazz solo, it's not that I'm transcribing something and I record it and I write it down. I'm actually it's like composing, but I have a set chord progression that I'm borrowing. And that goes back in the jazz tradition with I Got Rhythm, because there are countless tunes that are written on the Gershwin's chord progression of I Got Rhythm.
I see. Okay.
So it's a jazz tradition to do that. Yeah. They're also called contrafacts.
Okay.
Contrafacts.
Have you had, or are you dreaming of a dream collaboration?
Oh, so this is a little bittersweet. For many years, my dream collaboration was Chick Corea. And I met him, I heard him a number of times, but I met him in Monterey at the Monterey Jazz Festival, which I was playing at it the same year. And I met him and I had a chance to talk with him, and and it was because he was giving a little session. It was kind of like an interview and everything with a famous jazz journalist. And he was talking about the Dutilleux Sonata. And he said, it's a huge audience. And he said, has anybody ever heard of Dutilleux? And I raised my hand. I have. So afterwards, I was the only one, obviously. And so afterwards, I spoke to him and I said, I've played it. And he said, oh my God, you must be really good. So anyway, I told him that it had been a dream of mine for many years to play with him. And so he asked me to put together, an email with some samples and everything, and I sent it off. But sadly, we lost Chick Corea. So I'll leave him as my dream collaboration.
All right. Who's the most underrated jazz flutist right now that you think you should have people run out and listen to?
Elena Pinderhughes. I first heard her when she was at the Monterey Jazz Festival in what they call the Next Generation Jazz Orchestra, and it's the best high school players from all over the country. And Joshua Redman had played in it, Benny Green. These are all, kids who grew up in that band. And that's when I first heard her. And she has gone on to, I've seen videos where she's performing with Hubert Laws, and she's terrific. She's absolutely terrific. So I'm Elena Pinderhughes.
Okay.
That's my vote.
Okay. And what's one word to describe jazz when you play it on the flute? For me, I would say joy, but I feel joy anytime I play the flute. So maybe that's not the word that it would. You said fun. So, wow. What's one word to describe jazz flute?
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. It's cool.
And it's warm.
It's cool and it's warm, but it's cool in the coolest sense. I dig. You dig, baby.
I'm going to hang with the cats at the crib. See?
But I'm serious. I mean, I just think that jazz flute is the coolest sound.
Yeah. Let's plug AliRyerson.com.
Yeah.
And let's plug some of your projects and upcoming performances. Where can we see you?
Thank you, Amy. So probably the most important project and the most current, I just recorded a new quartet album, the Ali Ryerson Quartet, with the rhythm section that I've been working alongside in the Northeast for the last few years, and Larry Ham on the piano, Lou Pappas on the bass, Tom Melito on the drums. And we recorded this past summer at a wonderful studio in outside of New York City. It's called Octavian Audio. They have two absolutely gorgeous Steinway grand pianos, so it's sort of like take your pick. That album will be released in 2026, and we'll probably be doing our CD release tours starting in the summer of 2026, and so dates to be announced. I'll be at the Florida Flute Convention the end of January, and I'll have my volume 2 of my Ali's Jazz Solos. And we'll be doing one of the sessions that I've fallen in love with doing. It's a play along. So I share some of the solos, and I create backing tracks at a couple different tempos, so we can start slower and then get into the groove, and everybody plays the solos along with me, and it's a groove, and it's very cool. And in March, I was invited to be the guest artist by the Utah Flute Association, so that's going to be very fun. And this coming year, right now, I've been composing a lot of flute music. One of the things that I always find when I'm touring, I've toured a whole lot this year, and it kind of precludes being able to work on composing. So I decided I'm going to take almost an Ali sabbatical from touring to really focus on some more writing.
Good.
And I'm really excited about it.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah. And of course, my teaching continues. I'm right in the middle of another lesson-based series. And those students at the moment, I have just about 20 students in that class. And we meet like every 3 weeks, and it's four sessions to the series. And we do, I write solos, and I do coolified jazz standards. So there's something for everybody. In other words, if you're just new to the jazz scene, or if you're very experienced, there's kind of something for everybody.
Ali, you are the best. It's so great to call you a friend.
Oh,
and thank you for being in PorterFlute Pod.
Oh my gosh, it's been an absolute joy, the coolest joy. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Every single time that I hear you play, it's like I'm hearing you play a piece for the first time. I mean, it's like you're creating it in the moment. That's all jazz is. You are a jazz flute player.